Hi, my name is Lucy Hughes.
And I'm Dominique,
And we're the Team 73 Luvo, and we made a game called The Last Christmas. Now Dom, would you like to explain some more about it?
For this project we were given 12 weeks using two themes, seasonal holiday and post-apocalypse. Our main inspiration was The Last of Us Part 1, Remnant from the Ashes, and the game Little Nightmares 2. Each of us had our own little roles, big roles, in this first-person narrative adventure game, and this is what they were.
So for the PEGI rating, we decided that we'd go for 16, PEGI 16, because we wanted it to have some violence in there. We know there'd be maybe some drugs and stuff in there, some bad words, and we knew that it'd be too much for PEGI 12, so we decided to go for PEGI 16 just to be safe. For our target audience, we decided we were going to go for teens to young adults, so between the ages of 15 to 24, because we knew it would be relatable with our character the most. Our character's age is 16, so we wanted the story to kind of relate, because our game is very narrative. So for me, obviously my name is Lucy Hughes, as mentioned before. I was the exterior modeller, so I modelled the buildings and the roads, like everything on the road. I was the main texturer, so I textured everything except from Dom's artifact project, which he retextured. I was the main UI designer, so I UI designed the journal, the notes, all the lore UI stuff. And I was the co-level designer, so at the start of the world that we were planning it out, me and Dom worked together to figure out a level and layout of how the map would work, and I was also the assistant concept artist because I drew the main character Jack. In the future I would like to be a games artist, so that's why I focus on more of the visual side of the entire game.
As mentioned as well, I'm Dominique. I was the programmer for our game, making things like the doors opening, the main UI loading screen, and the snow, which was a Niagara system. I was the main concept artist, drawing things like the poster, loading screen, box art cover, and the side character Maisie. I was the interior model as well, doing the subway station and the inside of the convenience store. Being the co-level designer, we did make the map together, but sometimes I had to remake it due to any problems that came up with the Unreal map and how it flowed a bit differently than we thought it would. And I was the video editor, making the trailer that you'll see in a moment, the walkthrough, and a walkthrough that Lucy had dialogued over. And in the future I would like to be a games designer and programmer, starting games from scratch and things like that. It's dead now.
So you can just
shoot it down, arrow.
So this is the trailer for our game, so we'll just show you the whole thing now. It's about a minute long, I think, so yeah, we'll show you the slides.
Lights.
Is that the right one? Yeah.
PEGI 16. For 3 years, the world has been thrown into chaos. They took so many lives, and now they've taken my sister. All because of those things people call canes. I must find where they came from and how to rid them from the world. Getting her back is my one objective. I'm sure she's alive. I can feel it.
Oof. Very good.
We'll also show you a 1 minute clip of our non-commentary walkthrough. So.
This seems to be the right place. It looks like a map with writing, but it's too dark to see what it says. Maybe there's a light around it. It looks like I know. I'll add it to my journal. Jack's to permit? It says it's a convenience store. Maybe I'll find something useful in that.
That's just a small clip of what we got.
It's brilliant.
For the game's narrative, we decided to choose this. In December 2012, Santa mysteriously disappeared, and he was unable to deliver his presents that year. As rumors of Santa not caring anymore grew, so did the resentment from the children. This anger and fear and resentment has grown and festered into the spiteful spirits that they nicknamed Canes, nicknamed after candy canes. The Canes chose their victims and terrorized them until they were either killed or consumed in their shadowy black bodies. These Canes were a powerful and invasive species, thus the downfall of humanity.
Now, when he was younger, an orphan boy named Jack decided he wanted to take care of a little girl called Maisie. And they grew up together in the orphanage, and they loved doing everything together. And they hated the place. So in December 2012, they took this opportunity of the Canes spawning everywhere to run and flee from the orphanage. A year after the spawning, they ran out of food, and so they decided to go into a supply trip. And this day was never ever forgotten by Jack. Unfortunately, Maisie was killed by a cane after they were chased through the town, and Jack began to spiral. And he vowed that he would always take revenge on the Canes, and he would figure out a way to stop them. Believing he wouldn't ever get close to anybody ever again, he set off on a journey to learn more about the Canes and to find out if he could potentially save humanity, maybe even his sister.
A bit more about the characters. Maisie is Jax's driving force in the whole narrative of the game, the reason he keeps pushing forward. The possibility of her being dead is like one of the it really adds to the weight of Jax's guilt and loneliness after he finds out that there's a possibility that souls can survive after being consumed by a cane. He tries to find a way to get her back.
So here we have a few slides just showing our best work, like our favourite work that pieces we've chosen. So the next two slides are mine, and then Dom will explain her two slides. So on this slide is all my models, so just without the textures. So you can see on top right and the bottom left, you've got my Unreal, so how the models were placed into the Unreal at the end. So I think that looked really good. I think shadows added a lot of element to it, even without the textures. The models themselves, you can see they're quite detailed, and that's what my favourite part was about it. I'd say my least favourite one of these was the care home, which is in the one in the middle. This one was the bed and breakfast, which was probably my favourite. A row of houses, a row of shops, and an exit door. So I would say that bed and breakfast was probably my favourite because I loved the detail on it, and it had like a garden in the front, so it was really nice. On this side is all my textures. So you can see bed and breakfast as a GIF of it being textured at the top. You can see the station graffiti being added at the bottom. This is the blackboard sign that Dom created, like the actual blackboard for, like the base of it. And so Dom will explain more about that and the meaning of it in a second. This is the journal UI that I created, so it was part of the UI design that I did. Some of the items from the convenience store, a toilet door that I really liked for some reason, a row of houses, and my favourite, which was the row of shops, because I really love the textures and the colour of it.
Back to mine. As you can see, the bottom left, join the hearth thing that Lucy just mentioned, the blackboard. This would be could possibly become the antagonist of the game, depending on your choices. It's essentially a radical group that was made during the apocalypse. Like in Bird Box, they've got that group that is just a safe haven for some people. In this top left, you can see a drawing of the cane I made. It's just a shadowy figure with some strange little bits on the front of it with two possible eyes. We're not sure what they could be. There's the Unreal that I placed the houses in. This did change a few times. You can see the snow on it as well. Unfortunately, the map itself, it did break, and a lot of the buildings were removed like once or twice. And so this was the final product from that, and I'm actually quite grateful for that because it was able to make me realise the mistakes I did in the last and previous versions. Bottom right is just a quick GIF animation I made with Clip Studio Paint. It's the loading screen that you'd see in the walkthrough. Top right is a draft picture of the poster I made for our game. And the top middle is the station models that I've made for our game as well. My favourite must have to be the station just because of the amount of time it took to put on the map. Top left is just some repositioning of Lucy's artifact project. It was just because we didn't really like the old layout and it didn't work with the lighting that I wanted to do. Top right you can see the map that was the final version, and it definitely is my favourite because just from the top view alone you can tell that we definitely thought about what the player can see from the player point of view, as well as all the snow just on top of everything. Bottom left is the program I used for video editing, which was Wondershare Filmora. Bottom right is a storage unit that Lucy did make, but I did remake the layout of that as well. There is the convenience store that is just a small photo of that, and that's probably my favourite would probably be the Filmora editing, because that's just when everything came together with the music and the sound effects, and I just loved it overall.
If we were to continue the game, you'd be able to find the source of the symbol, so you might have noticed there was a symbol that kept repeating all over the place.
Yeah.
For example, there was a light flickering showing the station beside the symbol in the station. You'd be able to find out who this group is, what they're doing, why. You'd be able to slowly learn more about the Canes, where they came from, who they are, more about them in general. You'd be able to meet the scientist's initials JN, which is the person who writes to you on the note initially, so you can see the initials at the bottom if you read it. And you'll find out more about them, you'll be able to meet them. You will be able to visit a small science facility and have the ability to look at Cane's research, whether it's on a computer and scrolling through the research of the Canes, heights, sizes, different types of Canes, things like that. You'll be able to figure out if there's a way to save Maisie, so if somebody is consumed, can they be saved or not. You'd be able to figure out more about Jack's past, learn more about who he is, where he came from, etc. And you'd be able to discover that Jack remembered the past incorrectly due to denial, so actually Maisie was killed and never consumed, and he didn't know that because of denial. Yes.
Well, that's a shame.
Would you like to explain about the mechanics?
Yeah, talking more about the mechanics, we would have something like a stealth bar, which would be very reminiscent of the 7 Days to Die game, because we really wanted that stealth mechanic, and having just a visual aspect to knowing if a Cane or enemy human can see you. And there'd be a health bar, however, only when you're near danger, so you can keep really a lot of that cinematic view when you're not in danger, as I've said. That would be quite reminiscent of games like Elden Ring, as you only have your health bar when you're in a boss arena. The whole combat system would be very similar to The Last of Us Part 1, because I really like the idea of not attacking, but rather escaping for all the combat. And overall, just as you explore deeper into the city, you would be able to deep dive into the lore and just why everything's the way it is now.
Thank you for listening to our presentation. Do you have any questions?
Well, I reckon that's one of the best presentations I've ever seen, to be fair.
Really?
We generally get teams of 4 year after year, and they're all right, but you're generally within the team, maybe 2 or 3 have done all the heavy lifting, but I said to Josh before, teams of 2 is a bit too small, but I'm surprised by what you've done. I know you built on your artifact projects, you took your subway, you took your room, but I mean, there's a lot more than that there. So I'm really impressed, but I've got, Josh?
So some of the questions I had was, what did you find was the biggest challenge?
Do you want to do what we worked on, and then she has her challenge and I have my challenge? Yeah, you go first. Yeah.
I'd say my biggest challenge was the UV unwrapping, because sometimes Dom had unwrapped them previously and it turns out they weren't matched to my modelling style, so when I tried to texture them it appeared distorted, so I had to go back and UV unwrap some of these models that Dom had previously unwrapped.
I bet you my biggest challenge was trying to find a dynamic snow system, and unfortunately I wasn't able to. It took me about 2 or 3 days just to try and find one that could work, because it would just keep giving you, instead of tutorials of how to make a dynamic snow system, it would just say, oh, buy it on Fab. So unfortunately we weren't able to make a dynamic one.
It seemed pretty dynamic to me. I think the atmosphere of that game was really good. It looked just really visually finished. Generally most games are kind of a bit of smoke and mirrors, There's one copy, it's literally smoke and darkness, so there's nothing textured, so it's all kind of shades. That seemed like a fully realised textured world. With a
really
massive narrative going on.
What we really wanted to nail down was that atmosphere, and I'm glad that's shown through.
I think what helped was your trailer with the music, that kind of discordant Christmas music, so it's all very uneasy. How did you do that? Did you find that, or was that AI'd? Or?
It did take me a while to find what I wanted, and I did use a blend of about 3 songs. For the first half it was I think Jingle Bells.
You
quite-
recognise it? It's all off chord.
Yeah, it's
Is it really
I think
kind
you
of
would
through?
call it
Well,
off key
I know this, but
or an octave just below,
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Can't really remember, but I definitely searched up a few songs trying to.
I think as a trailer, when you try and explain what trailers are meant to do, that's what they're meant to do. It's just
Intrigue.
you know it's not all there, but there's a story and what you've seen that symbol, or even wrote down something. What's that mean? You're intrigued straight. Well, I'm in a subway. I'm in an overground world. You talked about all these other buildings. Do you go inside these like convenience stores and the subway? Do you interact with that more and the orphanage? Are they all kind of built? What would you do with all those buildings? What's the premise behind them? Is there like something? Is there information in every
It'd be
building?
quite like Remnant from the Ashes. The buildings you can explore inside them, but it'd
Yeah.
be quite empty because it's just it's been 3 years since the post-apocalypse
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Cool.
Anything more?
Did you think that you needed more people, or do you think that 2 people worked well?
I think we were perfect for each other because of how we work on our own. I can be lazy, but I do work hard because when Lucy she tells me that's not good enough, can you do that again?
Yeah.
But I do like to work efficiently, so when I see that Lucy's working on something for way too long, I do tell her to reel it back in.
I do think that we could have done with an extra person for UI, because I think that despite it not being a struggle, I think it would just make like an extra boost if there was a bunch of AI,
Yeah.
UI settings and things like that to go on, just an extra little thing you can add. So.
I think with UIs it makes a massive difference, but when, let's say you had something like Abby doing it, they've got to wait a long time. They're
Yeah.
kind of waiting about
Yeah.
6 or
I feel like
8
we would have
weeks.
extended our project if we had.
I know.
We actually asked her originally, and then we decided that we
Yeah.
didn't want to put her in that
Right.
situation
I
because
thought
we
so.
knew that we would have to, like, she would have to wait for us, and
Yeah.
we knew that she'd be bored for a lot of it, so we
That's
wanted
pretty
her to do
noble.
her own thing.
She wouldn't be able to shine as
Yeah,
good as
much
she is now. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. There seems to be nothing you've really not considered. There's definitely a strong driving. I mean, the Canes intrigued me. What are they, spirits? Or where do they come from?
They come from like the emotions, the very strong emotions
Human
of
emotion.
the children.
So they've
The children that didn't
externalised.
get their presents that year, so it
It's
would
like an
actually not
anger.
be all over the world.
Yeah.
The Canes in the post-apocalypse setting, because in, let's say, a third world country, they wouldn't get as many Christmas presents, so they
Yeah.
might not feel as much hate, so there wouldn't be as many Canes in the area.
Right. There's something like, what, shadowy...
Yeah, they're just like
Spirit.
a shadow. At first we did have a Christmas hat on them, but we thought that was a bit too on theme.
Yeah, don't do that. Next thing about you can somehow revive souls. What does that mean? And this scientist JN, what is that? Is that the whole thing about reviving souls, or?
So basically, a person can either be killed or consumed. Now, consumed is
Yeah.
them getting sucked into the body,
Gone.
whereas killed is them being slashed or killed, just dead.
All right.
Although it's kind of very difficult to tell the difference between the two. So
Yeah.
one can only look at somebody and go, I hope they're alive. But the thing is, people have figured out that the people who are consumed still take over part of the cane. Only part of it, but they're still in there somewhere. So people have been trying to experiment, such as the scientist JN, they've been trying to figure out ways that they can bring these people back up to their
Yeah.
normal state. So that's the main story about the caves.
I do want to say about the Canes just one more thing. There would be it would be quite reminiscent of a lot of games that you see with regular zombie enemies and how there would be different types. I would say that a Cane, without having killed or consumed anyone, it would just be the common enemy that you'd see a lot. But once they've recently consumed or they consume more humans, they level up and they have changed forms, whether they are the last silhouette of the person that they've consumed or just crying voices of everyone inside that cane that
Wow.
they've consumed.
So you could see you could see somebody's likeness.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to kill them, how if you kill them, you'd
Well-
also be kind of like guilt or torn by.
Yeah.
You might be killing the
Part-
person
Part
inside.
of the reason why Jack believed Maisie was still alive is because he could see the eyes
Yeah.
instilled within the cane. But that, of course, as
Wow.
mentioned in the continuation of the game, that was all a delusion. So he just was in denial that it happened, and he believed that she was still in there somewhere.
Wow.
I did really want to make sure she was dead.
My last question is, what were the main influences you've mentioned, like The Last of Us, as well as Bird Box? Like, what were you looking at when trying to make the game?
Little Nightmares 2.
Nightmares 2.
It's one of my
We're
favourite
looking at
games.
Remnant from the Ashes as well. We liked the visual aspects of Remnant from the Ashes and The Last of Us.
Yeah.
And then we like the
The
idea
Little
of
Nightmares
Little
2 was because of the city that you would see in the background constantly during the game. Because in Little Nightmares 2 there's a tower that is just the end goal, and that's why I thought of the city buildings. Also, the atmosphere in Little Nightmares 2 is just absolutely phenomenal, and how the main character is just this tiny little person in this huge world that you barely ever see anyone.
I think what I did pick up on all those names. I think you mentioned a few more, but I think he did contextualise it really well. Like, just inspired by this game and this game. You kept bringing games in. You might just try and put maybe a quick screenshot in your presentation, say, we like this thing from this game, we like this thing from this game. Like, it's like a 1 second shot. But apart from that, it was, again, I think it's the best presentation I've ever seen, especially for 2 people. I've never seen that level of finish, usually, by a team of 4. You don't tend to see that level of thought in an idea. I've never seen that before. You get good ideas, and then seen a good idea actually branch out. Every time I get industry, they always go, and what would you do next? They've never really considered what to do next. And basically your whole picture's like, and when we get to this, there's this, and there's this, and there's this. We question more about each thing. You've got an answer for every single thing. There's a fully working game in that. I think one day if you go to, well, you'll go to university, but I think within your next 3 years, you should try and follow that through. Somebody would be really into that pitch. It's a good idea. It's not a typical kind of zombie game we find really completely boring. There's an intriguing kind of like narrative of, tracking down these demons, but you're conflicting emotionally with the fact you've got loved ones in there as well. And it's kind of global. It's not like in one town, it's like every town across the whole globe, and culturally it'll be different wherever you go. I mean, where is this set? It looked British.
Technically, it's not a real location.
But it felt British, this one.
It was British architecture,
Yeah.
but the layout of the city would be more reminiscent of Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think
blocks.
if you pitched it again, it doesn't bother me, but I think if you pitched it again, you might try and locate where it is. I remember looking through your slides, a lot of it's kind of Warrington, local art. It was a great thing for a project. So you might say, this is our kind of, England version. That
It
could
is
then
based
be.
in England.
But we could basically branch it to be every single country and place in the world, in theory.
I think with all the problems that the main character comes across already, I think at least England structure housing would be good for the cult.
Yeah, I mean that's one last thing. If obviously Jack's your protagonist in this episode, he's not going to travel the world, is he? Endlessly killing down every single cane.
Yeah.
So how do you imagine if version 2 is in Philadelphia? Who's going to be the protagonist in that, for example?
I think
How does that
if
work?
we were to have a second game, a version of it, the first game would be about Jack, for example, Jack's story. The second game would be about somebody else who has this, not the same story, of course, because it's very boring, but maybe set in another location, a new person, a new story, maybe older, maybe younger, experiencing their own thing.
But all the same narrative.
Yeah, same.
Just different time
exactly,
frames.
Just their own
Yeah.
visual side of the story.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of multiple games of this version.
Yeah, I
being
think
set at
seamless,
different
really.
parts of the apocalypse, because this is 3
Yeah.
years into the future
Yeah.
of the start of the chaos. It would be really cool if we had a game
Yeah.
that was when the first outbreak of the Canes had started. That would be really cool.
It's like 28 days later, became 28 weeks later, and then this year it's 28 years later, so whether you like it or not, obviously somebody's built like a world of, this disease and zombies, and it's going on month by month, now year by year. Yours could be a very similar kind of franchise. Anything else? Well, there was one more thing.
I'm just trying to think. I think that it's
Come on.
it's fleshed out. I think the last thing I did want to ask was, in terms of mechanics, how many of the mechanics did you get implemented into the game, or were you more focusing on just the aesthetic for now?
I would say we got through enough mechanics for it to be helpful to the atmosphere, but we definitely focused on atmosphere rather than the mechanics so far. We wanted it to be really story driven, just narrative explosions. So.
And I think what I would do is, you don't have to put this down. I would keep working on it, and at some point when you think it's ready, it's playable, release it on itch.io, because then it'll be a portfolio piece for both of you.
There's a lot of work to do. Obviously, you've just built a kind of a shell of a world, and once you get that more internal and immersive with more mechanics in it. But I mean, you did cut your video run through short. Is that because there's not much in it,
it's
or?
4 minutes long, and I wasn't
We'll
sure
definitely
if we
watch
should do
it.
that.
But some of the playback, is it in there? The actual
There's
interplay.
it goes all the way to the storage room, and there is some more voice lines that you didn't hear. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to pick up items as well, and you'll use them for the flashlight. You can use them for the map. You'll get in the journal. You'll have a quest log, so you can figure out what to do next.
I think that's the only thing we didn't really, because you cut that short and it was so well done. I feel intrigued to go back to watch more of that. We won't do that today, but I think if we had visitors here, they want to watch more of your interplay and see actually how that works together. But it's a shame they didn't come, but because they thought we wouldn't have enough time to do all this. But I think they've been majorly impressed, knowing what they've seen before in the past. This is better. What they liked in the past, this is better than that. So you would have been massively praised. So you've done a really good job. One last thing, also that join the hearth or the hearth thing. What's that? Some radical group you said.
Usually during apocalypses, groups are formed, whether they be
Factions come
factions, very similar to Fallout 4, and how
Yeah.
they've got the police group and the government. That's not technically a government, but that radical group, it can become, depending on how you view, like
Can be
their
good, can be
opinions and
bad,
what
can be
they're
sort of
working
vigilante,
for.
whatever.
They can become like the antagonist to the game, but they could also be that third party that you see in a lot of movies.
That's good.
To get to meet the radical group, you will have to meet the scientists first. The scientists will guide you over to it, so kind of like drag you in. So it's not like, oh, how do I find this group? It's kind of like, oh, you meet this person, and they will take you there.
Yeah. So the big one is you have to give it away to, but obviously Santa went. Did you work out what that is? Is that some kind of big end
He was
point?
kidnapped.
That was very vague.
Yeah.
But I imagine in this whole world, that's the central thing that eventually might get resolved
everything's
in
undiscovered.
years to come or decades to come.
Yeah.
You've worked that out. You have to tell us, but do you know what that outcome is with where he is and why he was
kidnapped,
taken?
and if we could actually keep him alive, or he could be killed by, let's say, the Hearth group and what they're working towards.
I think it sort of builds why he was taken, what he represents, what he is.
Yeah.
That's probably the whole heart of the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because due to the Canes being spawned after he was disappeared, even if he comes back now, there's no chance of the world returning to how it was.
Cool. No?
Anything else? Anyway, well done. That's really good.